Hello, everybody. I just had another thought experiment, and so I wanted to walk through it with you all and see what you thought. And I'm hoping someone will point out the obvious pitfalls, because I often have these ideas and I will talk myself through them, and they're fairly harmless ideas, so there's no real harm in me believing them, but I'll be too busy to do any further research. And so anyways, if anybody has any expertise, please correct me. So what we're going to be talking about today is a new economic system, or a new way of employment, where there are no employees and employers. Everyone just has their own little business. And if you have a skill, then you can hire yourself out. And how this gets done, how you find work, and how people find other people, because you can hire other people, but only ever as clients, or as, like, you can be like, oh, I need someone to make me a set of chairs for a dining set, whatever, for a set in a movie that's coming up. And I need someone to make me a piece of music for a movie that we're making. And so you go out and you find a person who has, they've put out the fact that they are looking for work, they play music, and you pay them money to make this particular piece of music, or in this particular amount of time. And the person doesn't work for you per se, like they're not your employee. And so at the end of the contract, they can leave. And at the end, if they decide to just kind of, they're like, I'm done. Like, I don't like working for you, I'm gonna just not work for you anymore. Then they can kind of do that, instead of what you have to do now, where you have to, like, quit your job, find a new job. It's like, well, if you stop working for this person, you're still employable. You just have to put yourself back out there, but you're still your own employer at the end of the day. And this distribution method, I think the only thing that came to mind really when I was thinking about it was some sort of dispatch unit. So what you could do is, all the dispatchers are self-employed, and they are kind of, you get a dispatch phone, and you probably have a computer to receive and send emails. So it's still a self-employed thing. And a dispatcher, let's say a new dispatcher who's trying to become a dispatcher, would go out and send out their card, or if there's like a dispatcher bulletin board, you can put on your name and number on the bulletin board, and then people will call you and say, hey, I'm looking for work. And then someone else would call and say, hey, I'm looking to hire someone to do this thing for me. And then the dispatcher would be like, oh yeah, I have someone here. Or, oh no, I'm not sure, but if anybody calls in with this information, then I will give them your number, and they can call you, and you guys can figure it out. So they're a distribution service, and it would be relatively easy to become a dispatcher, and you could stay a dispatcher for life if you wanted to, but likely it would be a stepping stone in the society. You become a dispatcher, you would make money, and then that would give you the money to get training of some sort, to become something else, and then you can hire yourself out as that other thing once you get some experience. Or maybe you might even dispatch part-time to make money. And then the way that I thought that the ranking system would work is basically you price yourself out per hour at equivalent to your skill level. So if you're brand new, maybe you price yourself out for free, and people know like, hey, this is an inexperienced person, but I'm getting a little bit of free work. As soon as you have any experience, you can price yourself out at a low rate, or maybe you start out at a low rate because you have some confidence and maybe you grew up doing this thing, whatever it is. And so you price yourself out low, and so people come and they're like, oh, I don't need any high quality work. I will, I'll pay you the cheaper rate. And it's sort of also expected and implied that someone who is charging less will also take longer. And so there's all these kind of implications that come with someone who isn't charging as much is going to be slower or not do as well. And then someone who's charging a lot is going to have high quality work, likely be faster. And it all kind of hinges on this dispatch service. You could have ads in a paper, and you would have someone running the paper. And you might be thinking, well, okay, there's a problem. Let's say you need someone to manufacture something large, like a vehicle. Like, sure, you could have an independent mechanic, and he could run his own shop. And then how does he do his books and run his shop? Well, he calls out and he has an accountant, and this accountant knows, like, okay, he or she receives a set of receipts and etc. from this mechanic every probably couple weeks, and they do the accounting for that mechanic, and then they send them back. And there could even be situations where, like, there's so much work coming from one person to another person that essentially that is that only person's client. And so it would sort of be like an employer-employee situation, because that's the only person paying the other person. But if, let's say, just to use the example of like YouTuber, let's say there's a YouTuber and they've hired an editor, and the editor is getting so much money from the YouTuber and so much time and editing work that they only work for that one YouTuber, and that's all they have to do. And so it's like, well, they work for that YouTuber, but the editor is still freelance. And so if they decided I really don't like what this YouTuber is doing anymore, and they just can leave, or, their husband or wife, they decide we want to go on vacation, or we're going to have a kid. So we're going to take like a couple years off and have a kid and kind of raise this kid without working. And so I'm just gonna drop this editing gig, and I don't have to quit. I'm like, yeah, I'm done. And I'll be back in a couple years or whatever, but I'm gonna go have a kid now. And it would be as simple as that. So that'd be cool. But then it's like, well, what if you have a big company? Well, I don't know. This is the big thing that I'm not sure about. I think maybe you could have like co-workers where like a bunch of people come together, and either, they all hire each other, but they're all still independent contractors, I suppose. And or you have a bunch of people who have agreed, like, hey, we're all going to be working together. Nobody's above anybody else, but we all have different roles, or we all, we're all doing everything here. I'm not sure how the big company thing would work, because obviously there's big companies with thousands of people that manufacture and assemble vehicles and all that stuff, and computers, and et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know how that would work. Again, a lot of this would hinge off the dispatch system. A big thing I think that I'm trying to encourage in this sort of idea of a society is that instead of the power being in the hands of the employer or the person paying you, someone comes and they're like, I want to hire you to do this thing, and a lot of times companies bend over backwards to like do it fast and good and cheap, which is impossible. And so how do you do something fast, good, and cheap? Well, you hire high quality employees and you make them work really hard, and possibly don't pay them very much. That's the best way to do that. And so, or the easiest way to do that, rather. And so so in this society, the person who is hired is also always in charge of themselves. And so they can always just leave. And so you have to treat each other well, because there's no guarantee that it's like, oh, hey, I'm paying you. You have to do fast, good, cheap work. And it's like, no, I can do expensive, good work. And if I don't like how you're treating me, I'm just gonna walk away, and we're gonna be done here. Because at the end of the day, I work for myself, and I'm making enough money. I have other people who can pay me to do this work, and they treat me better. And so I'm done, I'm not feeling so good today. Instead of being like, hey, I'm not able to come into work, I'll go and get a doctor's note to prove that I'm sick, and like all these things. It's just like, yeah, I'm sick. I'll see you tomorrow. Like, that's it. I'm my own boss, and I'll see you tomorrow. And so I like this idea, but obviously there's a bunch of flaws, and I'm not well versed enough in business to know what these flaws are. And I'm sure a lot of people would say the flaws are like, I don't know. Some people like having employees. They like being in charge of people. And so people will be like, well, you can't just let everyone do their own thing because they won't know. And it's like, well, if you were raised in this society, then you could figure it out. Everybody would be able to function in this way of living, because there would be people along the way to show them the ropes. And so it's like, that's more of a question of like, you like to have the power, and not so much you actually need to be in charge of anyone because you're so good at it. Although it does raise the question of like, if we don't have managers anymore, what would all the people who are currently managers do with their lives if all they're good at is bossing people around? But anyways, so I thought it was a fun thought experiment, and let me know what you think, and point out all the problems with it, because I'm sure there's a ton. And yeah, thanks for watching. Bye.